Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hanukkah Erotica Book Club. I am Razel, and I'm joined by my co-host, Malia. Hi, Malia.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is different for us.
I know. I'm sipping coffee. The sun is shining. It's a whole different vibe.
It's completely. I'm enjoying it. How's it going?
It's good. You know, I escorted my screaming toddler out of the apartment 2 seconds ago, so now everything is quiet, and I've had 1 cup of coffee, and I'm excited for the morning that lies ahead.
Okay, great. I spilled 2 shots of iced espresso across my kitchen counter, but then I made a third, so I think I'm good.
You're hyped. You're hyped up.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm really psyched. And our last episode was fun. Got some good feedback.
Did you?
Yeah. People liked the Summer of Lost Letters.
Did people like I think people liked the call, but our diehard fans liked the return to, a scenario we've already discussed. So that was fun.
Oh, for sure. And since then, I was looking through Jonah's clothes. He has a lot of hand-me-downs, and I found a pair of overalls with like little anchors on them that was giving Nantucket.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good that he's already amassing he just needs a salmon polo, and
Exactly.
he's good to go.
Exactly. So yeah, it was good. It was great. And Hannah Reynolds commented that she was honored.
Oh,
yeah,
that's really
that was
nice.
Exciting. Yeah, very good. So yeah, it was awesome. I really liked that book, and I'm really excited about today. Big pivot.
And I think actually, like, we've done so much YA that I was, like, shocked by this book. I think I forgot that, like, adult romance novels actually have a level of sexual graphicness that the YA ones do not. But I feel like I was inured to that because of our long YA stint, but now we're firmly back in the adult world.
Yeah, we're back in. So, and we have a guest. So we're doing the intimacy experiment, which we'll talk about. Let's wait till our guest comes in to give the intro on the intimacy experiment by Rosie Danon, and tell us about our guest.
So I'm really excited about our guest, and actually the reason we're recording at an unusual time for us, morning instead of night, is because our guest is based in Israel, and she'll be joining us from there, but she is Sarah Tuttle-Singer, and she is an author. She's the new media editor at Times of Israel. She's the author of a book called Jerusalem, Drawn and Quartered, but I really became familiar with her writing because she's written, all kinds of personal, sort of shorter pieces about different kind of juicy personal topics, romance, love, being a woman, and kind of mixed it up with her Jewish identity. So I just felt like she would be a really cool guest as somebody to opine about Judaism and romance and their intersections. So, and she agreed to join us. So I'm super excited.
So exciting. Can't wait. Should we have her come in?
Yeah, let's bring her on.
Hello?
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, can you hear us? Oh, I'm waving, but the camera doesn't work, so I'm just waving alone in a room. That's all these days.
Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your flexibility on the time and on everything.
We're excited.
We're so happy you're here. Thank you for being here. We see a very nice picture of you, like looking off with a nice, natural background. So we'll just look at that.
I wish I looked like I do in my picture every day, and so that's why I have it there.
Okay, I might need to update my Zoom app because I don't see a picture.
Oh yeah, there's like a cute picture of Sarah looking like windblown.
I believe you. But okay, well, Sarah, I'm Rachel, Malia's stepsister. It's really nice to meet you.
Hi, Rachel. Nice to meet you too.
Great.
So hi, Malia, and hi, William.
William's here too. Producer extraordinaire.
So we will talk a lot probably about a book that we read this week called The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danon. But before we do, we kind of want to just talk to you a little bit about you as a writer and all of that.
Great. Thanks. What can I tell you?
So we are we review romance books, and Malia was telling me that you write about kind of your own life and sometimes your own romantic history.
Sometimes too much, according to members of my family who wish I would dial it down a little. And now my kids are. I have three kids. I have a baby, and then I have two teenagers. And the teenagers know how to use Google, and they know how to spell my name and type it into search bars. And we're all on Instagram together. So I've had to sort of curtail the old stories that I'm sharing, not because I'm afraid of them reading it. In fact, I think it's important to share as openly as possible with your kids, but because they're cringing. It's they don't want to think of their mom as being anyone other than their mom. So it's a delicate balance.
Totally, that makes sense.
Although my daughter told me I'm not allowed to ever use the word cringe ever again. I put pink streaks in my hair recently, and I asked her if that was cringe, and she said yes, and don't ever use that word.
Like the use of the word cringe was more cringe than the hair.
Yes. But probably not as cringe as my previous, my romantic life that I've written about occasionally.
So have you really taken things off the internet?
No, I haven't taken anything off. I just a little careful about what I put on these days.
That makes sense.
As you start to get older, I think that'll, beyond the teen years, that'll start to get easier again. And there's some stories where they feature heavily that I've enjoyed reading out loud to them. Stories from like 10, 12 years ago that they really like. As long as ex-boyfriends aren't mentioned, it's all good.
Sarah, I feel like almost all the personal writing I've read of yours sort of touches on your Jewish identity in some way. Do you feel like that's sort of like a constant feature of your work, even when it's sort of personal writing?
I love that question. Look, I am Jewish before I'm practically anything else. I mean, okay, I'm human first and all of that, and I like that, the idea of universalism. But I'm also Jewish, and my Judaism very much informs my entire way of just being in the world. So I'm happy to know that seems to permeate my writing as well. But the history of my family and their specific story within the larger story of the Jewish people is something that I feel within me every day. It's as real as the color of my eyes, and certainly much more real than the color of my hair, which I do dye. But it's part of my DNA. It's part of my emotional and psychic DNA for sure. And there's certain family stories, like the one about my great grandmother who came over to Jerusalem to essentially be an au pair to her uncle, a man named Menachem Mendel Rand, who was buying different lands outside of the old city and within the old city and up in Spot, and essentially, bringing his family into the Holy Land to live. And she was supposed to be watching his kids, but instead she snuck off and had this wild, sexy, steamy, torrid love affair on a rooftop in the old city with an Ottoman official. And
wow, amazing.
Yeah, that didn't go down very well with her family, who sent her not just back to Poland, but they sent her all the way to Chicago, so she couldn't get up to any more mischief. And that's how she met my great grandfather. But I love that story, and I actually one day want to write more about it, about her experience being in the Holy Land. And it wasn't until, essentially 100 years later that anyone in our family, me and my kids, came to actually to live in Israel. So it took a century, but eventually we made it.
This circles back to something I've been wondering about you for a while, actually, Sarah. So I'd like to clear this up, which is speaking about Jerusalem and also this nice photo of you. Sarah posts like gorgeous photos of herself and of the city of Jerusalem often on social media, like that I feel like really evoke the story you just told, like sneaking around on rooftops and around corners. And I was just wondering, first of all, like, who takes those photos? Do you have like a photographer following you through the streets of Jerusalem?
This is a great question for
I love it.
influencers in general. This is, yes, we need to know.
Tell us.
So in many instances, my kids are the ones taking my
Oh.
picture. Um, my daughter knows exactly how to work my angles, which I greatly appreciate. My son has mastered the art of the mirror selfie on his own Instagram, but and he also can take a pretty good portrait. And he likes photography. Friends, sometimes strangers, sometimes just a regular old selfie camera, tried and
Like
tested.
like a selfie stick or a tripod?
Like, no, just like I'll just put the camera down somewhere, prop it on a bag or a bottle of whiskey or whatever, or a bag of chocolate chip cookies, and then to the front facing camera, timer, and
Okay, timer,
Mhm.
front facing camera,
Mhm.
bottle of whiskey.
Bottle of
Okay, I'm
whiskey.
taking
Those
notes.
are the elements, yes.
I'm
And
taking
also
notes.
train your kids to
Yeah,
work
train
your
your kids.
angles.
Yeah.
Also,
They're
something I
not
have
only
not
your
done.
dependents, they're your minions, and they can do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I feel like I'm on my way to this because sometimes I wake up and I look through my camera roll and there's like 60 selfies that my daughter's taken of herself. It seems like she took them within 2 minute span on her way to bed or something.
So
How old is she? How old is your daughter?
she's going into
Second grade, and then I have a 16-month-old.
baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, toddler.
So yeah, so he's getting there too. But yeah, no, this is good. Bottle of whiskey, selfie timer.
Training your kids.
My
We're
baby
getting the
son.
good tips.
So my older kids didn't actually grow up with the iPhone or with a smartphone until they were like 2 or 3. I didn't have one, but my baby son, already knows how to like pose his mouth for selfie. He does some sort of like smile / duck lips, nose crinkle. It's a fake smile. It's actually, it's funny and disturbing.
I was just gonna say, and disturbing. Yes, it's both.
Totally.
But Jerusalem, the city itself, especially for me, the old city, and also like Shuk Machne Yehuda, is just they're both such evocative places that it's really easy to take photos there because the colors seem brighter to me, and the light's different. And so, any photo I shoot, just of scarves billowing in the breeze, or produce lined up in a stall, it always seems to sparkle more than if I were to take those same pictures anywhere else. So there's definitely like the Jerusalem filter effect that goes on in pictures. So you got to come to the old city. Come to the old city with your phones. I'll be happy to take pictures of you both, and we'll make it
Oh
happen.
yes. That
Yeah,
sounds
no,
great.
it's so gorgeous there. It really is. And
Maybe we should segue to talking about our book.
I want to do that, but I actually just want to talk about one thing quickly, which is that Molly and I have explored a lot of Jewish romance written by American Jewish authors. And I know there's a whole world of Israeli books out there. Probably many of them are translated into English. And we've read a book set in Israel written by an American. But what's the Israeli romance book world like? Do you know, Sarah?
I wish I knew. Look, the whole country has an era of romance in it. Whether we're talking, purely emotions, or if you go to Tel Aviv, the city is just like you can smell sex in the air. Am I allowed to
so
say that?
sexy. Yeah, you can. Oh,
But,
by the way, the book we're reading today, there's no way around it. There's words we haven't used before on this podcast. Like, yeah, you
The
could say,
book's pretty steamy.
yeah, you
Awesome.
can say that Tel Aviv smells like sex. That's fine.
Totally.
But also, you know what? I want to tell you a little quick anecdote about Jerusalem. Let me see if I can manage the story. So when I was living in the old city, do we have a minute for me to tell the story?
Definitely.
Okay, it's about sex. But my kids can listen because I'm not involved in it. When I was living in the old city, I was living in each of the 4 quarters and working on a book about the experience in these different communities. And I went for Shabbat dinner at this beautiful home in the Jewish quarter with this really lovely, welcoming family. And at the time, I was I was using the apps for dating, mostly Tinder, and which is a little different in Israel. Tinder in Israel is more it's for people who are looking for just a quick encounter, but it's also for people looking for relationships too. So it's both. It's almost, I guess, like OkCupid in the United States. So I've been using the apps, and I end up at the Shabbat dinner in the middle of the old city with a stunning rooftop view of the Temple Mount and the Western Wall, and gorgeous pomegranates laid out all over the table, like lavish, sensual meal. And the guy sitting across from me looks kind of familiar, and he keeps sort of winking and blinking at me, and I'm wondering, like, wait, what's going on? Do we know each other? Like, have we met before? He's like, oh, sort of, but I don't want to embarrass you here. I'm like, wait, what? Like, have we met? I mean, my memory's not what it used to be, but it's definitely sharp enough where I think I know who he was. And then he whispers to me, we met on Tinder, and we're supposed to go for coffee next week. So we met at the Shabbat dinner. And it could have been the beginning of a beautiful relationship. It wasn't, though. But as we were walking back through the old city, and where I was staying, and he wasn't going home with me. I want to be clear about that. He was heading to Jaffa Gate. He said it was Friday night. He's like, and Dafka said to me, he's like, can you like feel like the intimacy in the air? Maybe this was just a pickup line, but there was something to what he said where he said it's Friday night, it's Shabbat. And there was sort of a kind of a gentle, intimate cloak around the old city where we were walking. And it was late at night. And it wasn't creepy the way he said it. It was actually quite lovely. And I liked that. So the sex and romance and intimacy is not just in Tel Aviv. It's also in Jerusalem. There's different ways of experiencing it all over the Holy Land, and it's nice.
Totally, it's so nice. My parents fell in love in Israel.
Yeah?
Yeah, my father was Israeli, and he was my mom's tour guide.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's how they met. But then my father passed away, and Malia's dad and my mom are married. Malia and I are stepsisters. So, but yeah, my
and
parents.
William and I got married in Israel, and actually met Sarah there during that same trip when we were. She was, I think, like Sarah. You were like lost in Tel Aviv, I think, and you were like looking around, and I think.
I don't know. We had some kind of interaction where you were like, I don't know where I'm going. And we were like, we don't live here. we can't help.
That is exactly, yes, I remember, but I didn't realize that was your wedding trip. That's so special.
Yeah,
it was so beautiful.
Rachel was there. It was right on the beach on Chof Dor in Kibbutz Nach Sholim.
Oh my gosh,
it was so beautiful.
Places.
So yes, we're all familiar with the romance of Israel.
Totally.
So you can send some of that through the Zoom here into this convo about this book.
So for this episode, we read The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danon. And Molly and I have been reading a lot of YA because our goal for the summer was to read some Jewish summer romances. And many of the Jewish summer romances were Jewish summer camp, like they ended up being YA books. I think that we want more and more Jewish summer romances to come out of the Jewish romance world, some of them being adult books. But we were reading a lot of YA, and we pivoted for this episode to read The Intimacy Experiment, Not a Summer Romance, by Rosie Danon, and it is not YA. At all.
Emphatically not. This was I think this might have been the raciest book we've read yet, actually. What do you think, Rachel?
Well, the thing is, it's it definitely is the raciest book we've read yet, but also has a lot of substance to it. So that's the thing that's interesting about this book. This book has a lot of substance and is also graphic and racy and sexy and also really descriptive. But I just feel like so much of the romance world, separate from the Jewish romance world, is there's a lot of books where there's a ton of sex scenes and not so much substance. This isn't a book like that. This is a book with a lot of substance, with a lot of depth, but also I do think was the raciest book we've read. This is a book about Naomi Grant, who is a former sex worker. She was a performer in the porn industry, and she's now pivoted to being an entrepreneur where she owns a online website app called Shameless, all about sex positivity. It's a subscription service. It's not porn. It's about sex positivity and sex education. And she kind of wants to pivot to becoming a sex educator. So it's about Naomi Grant. And then she goes to this convention to kind of get into the education world. and she's kind of felt to be, I think, belittled by all these academics. But there's this one person who she's immediately attracted to, who is named Ethan Cohen. She later finds out he's a Reform rabbi, and he invites Naomi to lead a multi-week seminar on modern intimacy at his shul in an effort to get his kind of shrinking shul increased membership and interest through this seminar, Modern Intimacy, that he think will appeal to the unaffiliated Jewish person in LA. His shul is based in LA. So that's like the premise of this book. Right? Yeah.
Yes. So I wonder, like, so when you said, Rachel, she's immediately attracted to him, she's like wants him, like she thinks he's hot. She wants to like go up to a hotel room with him, and then he discloses that he's a rabbi, and she's just like, oh, you're off limits. Like, and I thought it was interesting because I felt like this book, again, it has a lot. We've read other books where there's this trope of like the sexy rabbi. And I just still feel like, I don't know, Sarah, I don't know, what do you think that there's still this perception of a rabbi as being sort of like this very like staid, buttoned up character who's like off limits for any kind of like, I don't know, romance or sex or anything? Because that feels like a kind of a dated concept to me.
I agree. I mean, I think the trope of the rabbi, of the Reform rabbi, is he took guitar lessons at HUC and Tai Chi every other Tuesday. I mean, that's the trope that comes to mind about rabbis. So,
they have sex.
Oh yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they do. So I agree with you that that the old notion of the removed, sort of stoic figure with the long gray beard who's sexless is completely outdated. And I think that's not just true in the more secular Reform or even conservative circles, but even within Orthodox Judaism, there's much more of a conversation around a sex positive way of being in the world.
Totally.
There's even TikTok influencers, right? Like I know women from the Haredi community or maybe Haredi adjacent community who talk about intimacy and marriage. And I think it's great. I think it's just beautiful.
I totally agree. I've dated rabbinical students from every denomination, I believe.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, a badge of honor. And I do believe that's true. And so, yeah, I agree with you. But the thing is, I could imagine an unaffiliated Jew who spent most of her years in the porn industry, not affiliated and not involved in any way, not knowing that. I think like we're all involved enough in the Jewish community where we're like, yeah, an HUC rabbi hooks up.
Right, totally. Just jumping ahead, there's like a scene where like, there's the rabbi and the former sex worker, Naomi, are talking, and it becomes clear that Naomi thinks that the rabbi would wait until marriage to have sex if they were to like start any kind of a relationship. And the rabbi's like, what? Like, he thinks it's crazy that she even thinks that, like, which is kind of funny. So I guess it's right. I think you're right, Rachel, that it's playing on what people who aren't in the know think about rabbis. But I also wonder, go on. I will also wonder about the stereotype about people who are in the porn industry, because I also think this book kind of is trying to get rid of that stereotype. And because I think that there's a stereotype about people, women especially, I guess, in the porn industry, but they've, but they sort of have some kind of hard luck story. They have no one to help them. They fall into doing porn as like an act of desperation. They're trying to get out of it. All these sort of things. This is not what Naomi's supposed to be at all. It seems like she grew up as sort of like a middle class kind of like, I don't know, like lightly
half
affiliated.
Jewish, half Quaker. Yeah, she had a bat mitzvah. Went to
She's
Hebrew
like-
school.
Yeah, she's like, she has a relationship with her parent. Like, you don't learn, like, there's nothing about her, like, sort of falling on hard times. This is just, like, a choice that she made and, because she thought it was fun, which I think is, I don't know, interesting as well.
I do think, though, there's a big movement of, like, sex work is work. Like, this is definitely of that vein. And I agree. I think you're right. Like, I think that people would potentially have a stereotype against this, and this is definitely pushing against that. Sorry, Sarah, what were you going to say?
I agree with you, Rachel, and I like that it's pushing against that. It also is pushing against the bigger trope of the poor female, of the poor innocent woman who was led astray and has no agency over her own sexuality and the choices that she makes. I mean, it's a very, I mean, the idea that all sex workers go into it because they have no other choice and they're forced into it. And let's be clear, I mean, there is such a thing as sex trafficking, and it's horrendous, and we have to be aware of it and do what we can to shed light on that and stamp it out. But to say that it's only that isn't fair to the women who actually make the choice to go into this line of work, and it does remove their the power of their own choice from them. And I think it's kind of, I think that idea there's some misogyny in that idea.
Yes.
That women aren't able to make their own choice in pursuing that line of work. But it is a fine line, because in fact that is the case for thousands of women who are forced into it. So
right. No,
okay, I like how the book pushed back against the.
Yeah, sorry, I have a thought.
Two quick things.
Yes.
We have a lot, just two quick things. One, the board of the shul is definitely of the mindset in this book that, like, this sex work is not honest work, that her history and her past and all the movies she's been in is something that really cannot work with Rabbi Ethan Cohen and them being in a relationship together. He ends up kind of being forced to quit. It ends up resolving, but this is a big issue for the board of the shul. Not surprisingly, that actually feels pretty realistic. And Molly, I want to hear your thought, but I also did find the part of the book where they have that conversation about how when she thinks that he doesn't have sex, and I want to read that at some point. Okay, Mal, go.
Oh yeah. Let's read that. But I guess I just wanted to. Okay, so I want to push back a little bit. So it is great that all these stereotypes about sex workers are being dissipated, but how realistic is it that this rabbi doesn't seem to have one moment of hesitation about dating a former porn actor? Like, there's no moment where he's like, am I cool with the fact that this woman has, erotic videos of herself all over the internet? She's like notorious for this. Men all over LA know her as someone who has sex publicly, on film. Everyone's seen it. It's out there. Like, there's no moment where he has any even inner monologue where he gives this a second thought. Like, he likes her. He thinks she's amazing. Full
Which she
stop.
is.
Totally. I just wonder, like, is that completely realistic that he wouldn't even contemplate that as something about the person that he's getting into a relationship with?
I mean, I don't know, but Ethan Cohen in this book seems particularly evolved.
He's very evolved.
In general, in many ways, right? So I don't know how realistic that is, but based on the character that Rosie Danan has written here, it does feel very authentic to him. Like, he's a very evolved guy who has a lot of deep DMCs, deep and meaningful conversations, and but I think you're probably right. A rabbi.
But is he like a unicorn? Like, fine, she wrote this character, but like, does that character exist in the world?
I don't know, Sarah. What do you think?
Oh, look, based on my experience, cis, plural, I have kids. Every man and every woman I've ever been in a relationship with has had a conversation with themselves about my persona just as a writer. And I'm not taking clothes off on film, but the fact that I write about intimate things, whether it's previous dating experiences or previous marriages or my kids, or just, how my breasts don't fit into the halter top like they used to back when I was, 19 years old. I don't know a single person that has not had a split second of self conversation, or is that a term? But like around even that, let alone if I were a former sex worker. So but Ethan Cohen, bless him. Maybe there are more men like him in real life that don't need to ask themselves those questions.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think if your experience is that everyone you've ever dated has considered your writing for even a moment and thought about that, then it's probably very rare that there's a person, and certainly no Jewish rabbi, no Reform rabbis who are Ethan Cohen like through and through. But because also this keeps coming up, like they're in their first seminar of modern intimacy, and someone's like, "Aren't you going to teach us about blowjobs?" And then like they're at a mixer that they started, and they're like, "Show us your tits." Like there's a lot of disgusting comments coming from men throughout this book towards Naomi, and he flinches and he actually gets in a fight. He gets very, very upset about it, but on her behalf defending her, not like, yikes.
Right. Never once does it give him any pause, like, about how he feels about her or anything. All he feels is just, like he wants to be her, knight in shining armor and defend her, but that's it.
Right.
But the thing is, like,
which is its own problematic trope, I think.
That's probably true also. Although I don't know that she wants to be saved.
No, she doesn't want to be saved, but I think he wants to, like, he feels maybe a little bit like he feels intimidated by her. Like she's this, she's reclaimed pornography and now turned it into sort of like making her this like boss bitch sort of type. And he feels like, who am I? I'm just like this little rabbi at a failing synagogue. Although then you later find out that his mom is like Hollywood royalty and like runs this big, premiered like agency, and that he used to live this kind of like club kid type of life.
An LA industry kid.
Yes. And had some kind of religious epiphany, and now, I don't know, just like all the things to me didn't add up to the Ethan Cohen who we met in that book. Like his character felt too perfect for me in a way that wasn't real based on who he was supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Also, do we know an Ethan Cohen? Is that the name of one of the Hadar rabbis? Or is that another last name? Ethan? I don't know.
Ethan Tucker?
Oh, Tucker. Okay, fine.
No, I know it's around 17 Ethan Cohen.
Do you? Yeah. I was 16, thinking, like,
sorry, the other one's Eitan.
Yeah, Eitan. I was thinking, do I know any Ethan or Eitan Cohens? Probably.
I'm sure.
Ethan Tucker.
But I do want to say that even if he had this conversation with himself about whether he's willing to embrace the full package, including her history, I think that would actually, that doesn't make him at all. It's not a problematic conversation to have. It's an honest one, because we all have to sort of weigh these things in and make sure that our, not red lines exactly, but our boundaries and our, sense of the world is aligned with another person's sense of the world, and it's okay to have these kinds of conversations with ourselves and with others too.
We have a male perspective coming in here from our producer William, who just DM'd me. Back in the 1990s, flirting with a stripper at a strip club was fun until you win the jackpot and the stripper actually takes you up on the offer to go out. Then it becomes a neurotic situation for a Jewish guy, which I believe is a personal anecdote. So I guess, I which just bolsters my feeling that I think for most people, this would be some kind of more complicated than it was for Ethan.
Possibly. Although I do think within the industry, there's a lot more openness. Obviously, that makes sense. Like people within the industry are dating each other and in real relationships, and there's a lot of. It's possible. I mean, again, I think you're both right, and I don't think that Ethan Cohen was never in that industry, but like it is possible that there's a lot of kind of understanding and acceptance within the industry, and I think more and more is happening within the world, but because we know that there is also trafficking and a lot of very problematic situations, I think that it's a balance. Yeah. I don't think that that sex work is going to be like a universal value without it being complicated for all people, for some people. Okay, so wait, I wanted to get to that part where they were having this conversation about whether or not he has sex, because the thing is, they don't have a lot of conversations about like what Jewish practice means to him, like kashrut's never discussed. Like in a lot of the books that we read, there's weird conversations about those things, almost too much. Like, would this even happen? Molly and I read 2 Jewish romance books a week, sometimes more, just to get more understanding of
we're heavy. We're all in on this genre here.
Exactly. And so they talk about some interesting things about why becoming a rabbi, why Judaism. He weaves in kind of Jewish values and some Torah in his conversation at times, which I think is interesting. But she has her own perceptions, like we said, about what it means to be a rabbi. But again, it's like not at all about kashrut really or halacha necessarily, but this thing about sex comes up. So it's like a slow burn at the beginning, I would say. She wants him right away and flirts with him right away. But then once she finds out he's a rabbi, she kind of pumps the brakes, continues to flirt. But then they sort of become colleagues more than anything else and also develop this friendship. And he obviously is developing very strong feelings for her. They both are, but it is a will they, won't they for a long time. Would you say, Malia?
Absolutely. Like, I think 2/3 of the book is a will they, won't they.
Yeah, will they, won't they? It's like, it's hot, it's not, there's emotion involved. So then it happens, and they're together, and then they're back at his apartment another night. And they're talking about, like, do you want to watch a movie? Just because he, like, was trying to change the topic and didn't know what to do. I think he was afraid of being physical or something. Blah, blah, blah. She says, sure. What kind of films do you like? She let out a little low huff and then folded her palm across her mouth. What? She didn't remove her hand. Nothing. Basically, I'm skipping ahead. She was about to make a joke that was like, I like the kind of films. She's like, I almost made a joke about the kind of films I like are the ones with fucking in them. He swallowed thickly. Well, that's okay. Anyway, they start talking about that, and then she gets a little confused. Naomi's reaction was immediate, the way her mouth opened as her breath caught. Wait, you want to? Which, yes, of course he did, now that he had her permission. He knew she'd make a career of performing, and the idea of watching one of her old videos had occurred to him pretty much an hour after they'd met. She basically offers for them to watch a movie that she's in. Why wouldn't I? Because you're religious, Naomi said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Ethan tightened his jaw. What exactly do you think that means in this context? Even that question feels like such a Reform rabbi question.
Totally.
Like, what do you think that means in this context?
Oh my gosh.
It's just
back in Jewish Studies 101.
hilarious. Like I laughed.
I laughed out loud from that line. I don't know. She searched the living room as if looking for witnesses to back her up her hypothesis. But I figure if you can't have sex before marriage, then we probably shouldn't sit here and watch porn together. You think I won't have sex before marriage? He said slowly. Sorry, I said it so fast. Because his brain was sort of collapsing. Right. She folded her legs beneath her. I did some reading, and I know it's a sort of gray area nowadays. I assumed that as a rabbi, you'd want to err on the side of caution, and so we, wouldn't. Naomi, I still want to do this, Naomi rushed to assure him. Date you, I mean. Like, I like you. It's okay with me, I get it. I respect your values, even though they're different than mine. I appreciate that, Naomi, but I think your reading might have given you a bit of a false impression. I certainly take sex and all intimacy seriously, but I'm not sure I know any Reform rabbis who save themselves for marriage. Honestly, lots of the people I knew in rabbinical school hooked up with each other.
I'm sorry. She shook her head.
It sounded like you just said, she trailed off, voice weak. Ethan needed to make her understand. Naomi? Yes, her eyes were wide, and at this range, he could see flecks of gold among the green. He reached for her hand. I'm skipping ahead. I want you to hear me when I say this, okay? If we're going to date, I want you to know that I'm not immune to desire, and I'm very capable of acting on it. I'm going to need you to say that again and maybe use smaller words. Ethan thought for a moment. Okay, how about this? I'm a man, he said. Each syllable calm and clearly articulated, and I'm going to fuck you. So that was their conversation about sex.
And then they do watch one of her movies.
Yes. Then they watch one of her movies together where she's alone.
Right.
And he cannot handle it.
No, it's quite overwhelming.
And
that
she
was
leaves.
funny.
And then, by the way, but she leaves, hands him her undies.
Yes.
He jerks off into them after she leaves.
And that's their first date.
And he's like, if that was a first date with Naomi Grant, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this.
Wow, I miss LA.
Yeah, if that was what a first date with Naomi Grant was like, how on earth was he supposed to survive the second one? That's how that chapter ends. It's racy.
That was good. It's not YA. It's not YA.
No, it's not YA. It's not.
I guess I'm wondering, I wanted to know, so the whole conceit here also is that Naomi is teaching this series of lectures at the synagogue about sort of modern intimacy. And she has all kinds of sort of advice for how to successfully create an intimate relationship. And I was wondering what you thought of her sort of pieces of advice. And maybe we could run some of them by Sarah also, because I felt like there were things she was advising that I wasn't sure like what I thought about them. So one of the pieces of advice is that like, so that on a first date, instead of putting your best foot forward, you should immediately share whatever your biggest like flaw or vulnerability is. So instead of being, trying to be all like, nice and confident and friendly and picking up the check, you should be like, listen, I'm broke and I'm afraid of intimacy and whatever, still live with my parents and I'm a virgin. Like whatever you're afraid of shit. Like, put it all out there.
But by the way, accept the virgin piece, because later advice is that you don't have to share your full sex history.
Right. I'm sorry. You're right.
Minus
You're right.
that piece. She said that you don't have to do that. And you shouldn't feel like anyone is like entitled to that information.
Totally.
But everything else, yes. Like,
but
yeah,
that
she's
you should
like,
put out there, yes.
Yeah, like if you're broke, they're gonna find out anyway. If you have, debt, they're gonna find out anyway. So put it all out there, because like the real you is gonna come out. So be yourself. So what, Malia? You didn't agree with that?
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't think you should lie, but I'm just wondering, like, isn't part of the fun of dating that you kind of uncover things about people in context and like more slowly? Not that you should lie and say like, yes, I'm a millionaire, but not necessarily that you need to sort of like be sure to divulge everything that you feel is a flaw about yourself on a first date. Like it seems a little too sort of technical. I don't know. What do you think, Sarah?
I think it's also, I agree, Malia, with you on this. I also think that when you start dating somebody, they don't know you. Okay. I mean, that's so obvious, but if you only lead in with the things you've done, the mistakes you've made, and the debt you've accumulated, both real, financial, and emotional, they're not going to actually, it'd take a very interesting person, an evolved person, or maybe also an equally fucked up person to see beyond that, to actually get to know the other parts of you that are just as true and just as real. And when you say putting your best foot forward, it's that best foot is not an inauthentic foot. You're not lying about having $1 million or, doing charity work in some far-flung part of the world. You share the parts of you that are real, that make you shine, so that when you do begin to share the other parts that maybe you hold with less pride, it's taken into the context of who you are as a full human being. Because we're more than just the sum of our misdeeds, and we're also more than the sum of the things that we've done really well. We're all those things. So I think it's fine to share the positive, and then slowly, as you get to know the other person and decide whether you want to invest in that person too, then you can open up about the other stuff, and then by then there's enough knowledge that they have of you and that you have of them for there to be a bigger picture, and so it's not all one thing. It's not all negative. I hope that makes sense. What I'm saying. But I also agree, you shouldn't lie. You shouldn't, like, and if someone straight up says to you, hey, I only want to date somebody who is, who wants to have kids, and is completely debt free, and those things don't apply to you, you got to be clear on that you're in fact not the right person, because that's just wasting the other person's time, and that's not fair or kind.
Right. She also does talk about the importance of knowing what you want.
Mm-hmm.
She, she says, love or intimacy together or separate. I can't guarantee you'll find them as a result of this seminar. I can't even promise you'll ever find someone or multiple people, if that's your thing, who can tolerate you, even most of the time. Compatibility, trust, sex, none of the stuff we'll talk about in this seminar is scientific. Then someone raises her hand later and she says, yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that the dating equivalent of dress for the job you want is dress for the dick of your dreams. I don't even know how that person thought. Like, it's just, obviously, because it's a book.
Naomi led a sharp break. I was like, she wasn't in
It's
the
also
seminar.
a bit
Got it.
heteronormative. Some of us like dating
Yes,
women too.
exactly.
And also, by the way, Naomi Grant also does. Like she's bi. Naomi let out a sharp, grateful laugh, and just like that, she knew she could do this. I mean, if you're fishing for dick, sure, but keep in mind that's not that it's not in short supply. She picked up a whiteboard marker and scrawled out a sentence. If you don't know what you want, you shouldn't be dating. You could thank my therapist for that one. It's a direct quote. Now, that advice might sound harsh. I'm sure some of you were saying to yourself, isn't dating how I figure out what I like? And you're right, it is. But your efforts will go further faster if you first do the work of asking yourself and being honest about what you're prepared to give and receive in a relationship with another person. I don't know.
I don't agree.
Yeah. What do you think?
Look, I think knowing yourself is really important. Absolutely 100%. But I also think that what you think are your deal breakers may not necessarily be your deal breakers in a different context of meeting someone. And so the things that you think you know should be flexible. I really believe in kindness and flexibility when it comes to dating.
Do you know
Yeah,
this
I
from
actually
personal
think that-
experience?
yeah,
Sarah?
Oh, please. How much time do we have? Oh my God. Yes. And I also sometimes think that the checklist we think we want may turn out to be not what we need. And then we can get stuck on the wrong things and miss out on, on things that might just blow our mind if we're open to a process of discovery while dating.
I love that advice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think, and I think particularly in I know from coming from the more religious community, I think dating is so checklisty, especially in terms of religious practice, and it's seen as so critical that you pair up with somebody who is on par with you in terms of all this minutia of religious practice, which just seems like so not sort of the critical elements of what create a functional relationship. But more than that, those things shift so much over years and decades. Like the way that you practice when you're 19 just isn't going to be the case throughout your life, and you're going to evolve together with the other person. So
do you cover your table with plastic on Shabbat, Malia?
Right, exactly. Like what kind of a hair? Would you wear a sheitel or only a tichel?
No, I agree.
So yeah.
I'm interested what Eliza Ben Shalom would think about this, the Jewish matchmaker, because a lot of what she does is checklisty.
Right. Did you watch that show Jewish Matchmaking, Sarah, on Netflix?
I watched part of it, loved it. I love what she said about how there are, something like 15 million Jews in the world and 15 million ways to be Jewish. I love that about her.
Us too.
I liked her, and I have a friend who was involved with the show. A few friends actually. Rabbi Akiva Gersh, the vegan rabbi, and Shanna Tibi, who is a matchmaker from the States who moved to Israel and does really incredible work. And so it was fun to see their work on the show and watch her. And she had such a nice sort of Hamish vibe about her. I liked it a lot.
Totally.
It was good. She was I thought it was the Jewish representation we needed in that moment. And,
Totally.
Kol hakavod to her.
I totally agree. Okay, wait, back to Naomi Grant's advice. Were there other pieces of her advice that you wanted to talk about?
Actually, I want to say something about the oversharing bit.
Oh,
about,
yeah.
And letting it all hang out. I think when we create intense emotional, intimate experiences too early on, it's like jumping in on a building that has no foundation. And I am so guilty of this. Like this is, I can speak from my own personal experience on this. You forge these intense, intimate connections based on oversharing your past, and the other person does the same. And then you think you understand each other when in fact there isn't actually much there.
I think relate to this so deeply.
It's nice to meet someone who does. Thank you. So in my later years of dating, I'm now 42, but in dating in my late 30s before I met my current partner, I tried sharing more slowly, not because I was ashamed or trying to protect myself from my past. And also, if anyone with a computer put my name through Google, they'd probably find out all of this anyway. But it felt in a way like I was I was trying to lay a foundation for a relationship instead of just assuming that there was going to be a close, intimate connection from the get-go, because that takes time. And intimacy can be a really beautiful thing, and it's nice when it's developed over time and doesn't just fizzle out because you went too hot too fast. And I'm not talking about sexual intimacy. I mean emotional and psychological intimacy too.
Yeah, completely.
And what's behind the urge to go too hot too fast? Just like kind of
not being in touch with your therapist.
Wanting the kind of
I don't know. I think maybe also just the desire to see and be seen for your authentic self. For me, and I'm only speaking for myself here, that was certainly key, and also emotional loneliness too. Feeling invisible and looking for that one person to understand me, but those things take time, and so my way of countering that has been to just cultivate deeper friendships with that aren't romantic, and check in with my therapist more often to share those parts of me too, so that I don't feel the need to tell somebody every deep dark secret on the first or second date.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I feel like Naomi Grant would appreciate this conversation, actually. And even though it isn't exactly the advice she gives.
Okay, well, I feel like if anything, Naomi Grant seems like she's guilty of the opposite, which is like she's supposed to be more of the like, because I guess she's faced all this adversity in terms of people making assumptions about her as having performed in these erotic movies, that she's put this hardened like shell around herself, and she's very slow to open up and very cold. So I think it's the opposite.
That's true.
But I wonder, in terms of other advice that she gives that I questioned, she has this whole thing about like the importance of introducing your person you're dating to your friends, and that and seeing what they think, I guess, and that if you're reluctant to introduce your person you're dating to your friends, something must be wrong. And I wonder if you think that that's true. I mean, I don't know. I think it just assumes a lot about having a friend group that like really knows you and really wants the best for you and really like, I don't know, is like an extension of yourself. But I just often think that that's not necessarily the case. And I don't know if it's sort of that. I don't know what do you guys think about this?
Sarah, why don't you start?
Sarah, have you ever had someone you've dated who you're like reticent to introduce to friends?
Look, I like to figure out my own feelings first before opening it up to the peanut gallery. Also, as Molly, as you said, it presupposes that you have like the core group of friends who are like family, who get you and are ride or die. I mean, I have different friends from different kinds of pockets of communities, and so it's not like we all go out for drinks on a Thursday where I could invite my significant other to join. I mean, I hang out with someone from one group one day and then another group another day, and so on. So it's so logistically that wouldn't work. But regardless, I like to figure out my own feelings first, and also figure out who I am with this other person, and make sure that I'm vibing as much as possible with my authentic self first before I invite other people to weigh in on my own decisions. But that's me. That doesn't necessarily work for others.
I think that it depends on the kind of friend group people have and how much their friend group is involved in their life. I think family and friends could, she talks about friend group, but I think that it could be family and friends, depending on everyone's different experience with their family, with their friend group. Like, I really think it depends on the kind of person that you are. But when we were dating in our 20s, I do feel like introducing people to our friends was significant, Malia. I remember the day that I met William. Like, I remember it so clearly. And I remember introducing, well, the thing about Mitch is that I met Mitch at a party, my husband, and I met him at a party where a lot of my friends were. And then he came back the next week to another party that we had where even more of my friends were. And so before we even dated, a lot of my friends had met him. But I remember meeting Mitch's friends. Like, I remember that first night. I do think that it could, the feeling of, I don't want to introduce this person to my friend group because I'm not sure how they will integrate or how they will respond, feels to me like it could be a red flag. Or I'm not sure how but again, it depends on your friends and your family. Like, if you have a toxic family, then yeah, I guess introducing the person to your family is kind of irrelevant. But if you have a family who you really trust, who you have a great relationship with, who you really feel like, it's loving and supportive, and they get you and they know you and they want what's best for you and not just what they want in their minds, then it's significant, the feeling of wanting to introduce someone to your family and how will they react. But I think it's most important to understand your own feelings, because you don't want it to be mediocre, but then your friend group loves them, and then all of a sudden, you level up the relationship because of that. But I do think it's a worthwhile conversation in modern intimacy, which this seminar is, because this was a group of people in LA, living their LA life, and this was, I think that it was. Sorry if you heard that, but I think that this was, relevant to the group coming to this seminar. This idea of introducing someone to your friend group.
I like what you said, though, about that if you're lukewarm about somebody but your friend group loves them. It reminds me of that episode in Friends where Monica meets a guy and brings him to her friends, and they all love him. His name's Alan, and they're all about Alan, and they think he's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And Monica wants to break up with him, and she's less worried about his reaction, and she's more worried about how her friends are going to take their breakup. It was it's funny.
Totally. Yeah, no, I think that's possible. And it brings up just a lot of different memories of dating in my 20s and friends reacting, or having reactions in all different ways. So I think that it's relevant to the conversation of modern intimacy. What's interesting in the book is that once they start dating, they decide to follow the syllabus of the seminar, and so they go through. Their plan is to go through the whole seminar in their own dating as an experiment. That's how their relationship evolves, or that's kind of what they want what they want to do with their relationship, which is formulaic and silly because it's a book, but probably not so realistic. There's also a lot of beautiful writing in this book about breakups. And I feel like I actually don't want to give it away and encourage our listeners to read it, but there's more kind of beautiful writing and poignant writing about breakups and how you feel during a breakup than I've read in really any book that I could think of. And so I just thought that was beautiful, even though there was a happy ending. They ended up back together. He ends up working for the shul. That breakup piece is something I just want to mention as something we don't usually see in books, and I think that our readers would enjoy it.
Totally, I agree. Sarah, is there any chance that you are one of these Jewish romance novel writers under a pseudonym, and that you have some kind of other secret writing life that we're not aware of?
Maybe. Been working on some stories about a couple that I know extremely well. They're a mixed Palestinian and Israeli American Jewish couple living in Jerusalem, and the stories are not so much on romance, although there is some in there, just as there's always a thread of romance in anything to do with this part of the world. But the stories are about their life and their family and their and how they navigate the challenges of being a mixed couple in a deeply divided city and deeply divided society.
Well, we would pre-order that book.
Thank you.
Totally.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
We definitely would.
Totally.
Thank you so much. It's been so great chatting with you and hearing your insight about Jewish romance and intimacy and modern intimacy through the lens of this book and through your experiences and your life in Israel. Just really so nice to have you on.
Malia, Rachel, thank you so much for having me on, and I really enjoyed this discussion and your perspectives on the book and on the broader topic. So I appreciate it, and excited to see you both when you come to Jerusalem one of these days.
Yes, taking you up on that Jerusalem photo shoot 100%. So that is happening.
I'll even bring my daughter because she's really good at like taking photos of people, so we'll make it happen.
Amazing.
Great. Fabulous. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you both.
Bye. Wow. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Wow, that was a great conversation with her.
That was fun.
I loved hearing her insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I wish she had gotten a little more personal, but I understand why she maybe didn't want to. But I appreciated all her insights, and her advice, I think was right on.
Totally. I really want a few books. I want the book about meeting the guy in Jerusalem on Tinder. Honestly, just like being on Tinder in Israel sounds amazing.
Totally.
And I want a book on that.
I think a good historical romance about her great grandmother with the Ottoman official. That was pretty
amazing.
juicy.
On the rooftop?
Yeah, that's pretty steamy.
Then she gets sent to Chicago and the family doesn't relocate till 100 years later. It's like, it's sexy, but it has that family tie-in like we got in The Matchmaker's Gift in The Summer of Lost Letters. I want it. That
was very reminiscent of Matchmaker's
I want her to
Gift.
write that. I want her to write this book about her friend that she knows in her interfaith relationship.
Yup, for sure. That's good. Politics and sex. Good.
Yep.
Good combo. Incendiary.
Yeah, really good. Really good. She's awesome. I would love to have her back on. That was a great conversation.
Yep. And this was a
Give
fun
me
book.
an inch, I'll take a mile. I want more. Yeah, this was a fun book. What did you like the book?
I did. Like, there were some bits about it that were a little silly, like like how overwhelmed they were with like sexual desire, and all the talk around that was sort of funny to me, and like a little bit like, okay, it was that part was a bit much, but I get it, it's kind of the genre, so it makes sense.
Totally.
But overall, I liked it. It was fun.
It was fun, and it was definitely I liked the shul component, the synagogue, his life as a Jewish rabbi, his family. Like, it was good, and it wasn't Jewish light, like there was really a lot about it, about being, how you identify, and just all sorts of aspects that definitely made this romance not only a steamy romance, but a steamy Jewish romance. So I'm really glad we read it.
Same.
Do you want to hear about our next book?
Please.
Okay, so we are reading a book that we had intended to read a little while ago, but we sort of pivoted away from this book to dive into summer romances. But B'nai Mitzvah Mistake came out by Stacey Agder, and it came out in June, and we were going to read it right when it came out. It's now it's a series. She's writing a series called The Last Girl Standing. This is book 1, so she must be working on a whole series of these books. And this is B'nai Mitzvah Mistake. Sounds like it might be YA, but don't worry, it's not. It says, sharing isn't caring when it comes to your big day. Judith Nachman loves working as a project manager at the Mitzvah Alliance charity, and after 5 years, it's finally her turn to have the bat mitzvah of her dreams. Judith is enjoying every single moment of the process until she learns she has to share her day with the annoying hockey player who derailed her sister's career. Retired hockey player Ash Mendel is determined to start an organization to support Jewish athletes, and the first step is to have his bar mitzvah. He's not sure what he wants his day to look like, but he knows he definitely wants forgiveness from Judith, the woman he's sharing the date with. But Judith's nephew needs to interview an athlete, and Ash needs professional advice for his foundation, so they exchange favors. Except as they get to know each other and their worlds start to mingle, Ash and Judith will have to decide whether sharing their lives as well as their B'nai Mitzvah is the best decision they could make or the biggest mistake of their lives.
All right. That sounds fun.
Now, it's possible that some of our listeners don't know that there's a trend, there's something that exists for adult B'nai Mitzvahs for people who didn't have one as a child, as a tween.
Right. Sometimes they're on the like 13-year cycle of your like, I guess you would have one when you're 26 or whatever. The next 13 go around. It's a shtick.
It's a shtick. It happens. It's very nice that it exists as a Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
For people who didn't get to have a bar or bat mitzvah when they were younger. And so that's what's happening here in B'nai Mitzvah Mistake, written by Stacey Agdern, who is an award-winning former bookseller who has reviewed romance novels in multiple formats and given talks about various aspects of the romance genre. She incorporates Jewish characters and traditions into her stories so that people who grew up like she did can see themselves take center stage on the page. She lives in New York, not far from her favorite hockey team's practice facility. This also overlaps with a very big romance genre, hockey romance.
Is that a genre? Wow. Okay.
Oh, it is major.
Hockey romance.
Major. There's definitely more hockey romances than Jewish ones. Hundreds.
Are there all sports, or is hockey have a
Oh
specific...
yeah, there's other sports too, but hockey's really big. All sports. There's Jewish ones too. We could there's like a Jewish baseball one, but all sports for sure. I don't know what it is about hockey in particular. I guess it must be really appealing to a lot of women, but there's a lot of hockey romance books.
There's a stick, there's a puck.
Exactly. It's hot. But there's other sports too for sure. But yes, so Stacey must be a hockey romance fan, which I could chat with her about. She's also the sister of someone that Molly and I know named Russ.
Yes.
So that's what we're reading next.
Cool, I'm excited. Sounds good.
Me too. Anything else we want to chat about before we wrap up?
No, I think we're good.
I think we're good. Okay, readers, if you're reading along, we're reading B'nai Mitzvah Mistake. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We have another actually exciting thing coming up, which is that Molly and I were invited to guest on another podcast called Too Stupid to Live, which is a podcast, which is a really awesome podcast where they don't only review Jewish romance books, but they review romance books that are under $5.
Love it. That's a good sub niche there.
Yeah, so Becky Feldman, the podcaster who runs that, invited us. She said she loves reviewing Jewish romances and she's a fellow Jewish podcaster. And so we're going to be talking to her about a Rosh Hashanah romance.
Amazing.
As we start to unfortunately end summer. Yes. And get the new year started. So
heading into the high holidays, maybe not the most obvious setting for romance, but there's some potential there.
Some potential. So we'll be reading a Rosh Hashanah romance with the Too Stupid to Live podcast and B'nai Mitzvah Mistake next. And we hope everyone's doing well. The DMs are open. This podcast is produced by William Levin. It is brought to you by Hanukkah Pong, available on Amazon. Get your Hanukkah gifts early.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
for this morning episode. Bye.
Bye, Mom.